to the show. I am so thrilled to have
I
you
am
today.
honored to be here. This is just so exciting for me to talk about my book, to talk about Jim, to talk about how Jesus has worked miracles in my life is just so special. So thank
Mm,
you.
absolutely. I'm so thrilled to have you. And when I saw your book, it made me so excited. And here, everybody probably tells you this, but it reminds me of Tuesdays with Morrie, which was one of my favorite books as a child. Just conceptually, it reminded me of that, right?
Yeah.
And I thought, man, how powerful of a friendship that seems to be. And I'm so excited to hear more of your story, more of Jim's story. So, for those who are tuning in and are meeting you and they're meeting Jim and they're meeting this book for the first time, I want you to walk us through a little bit of how did you meet Jim and kind of the path towards eventually led you to this book.
When I first got to Colorado Springs, I was a brand new news anchor in town. And so I wanted to get my name out there. And I was invited to a ton of events. I emceed probably 2 to 3 events a week before I went to work. So my schedule was just jam packed. And one day I got this invite to meet a bunch of World War II veterans. And they said the oldest survivor of Pearl Harbor was going to be there. Did I want to come and meet him? And I was like, of course, I want to meet him. And also, I
Duh.
think,
Yeah.
right, duh. I think I'll call my chief photographer and see if he'll come by really quick so we can get a soundbite with him.
Yeah.
So I walk into this restaurant. It's just this old timey diner, and there's just a ton of vets there, each of whom deserve to be interviewed. But I see Jim. I know what he
Yeah.
looks like. I, did my little research ahead of time. And he walks in with his walker, and he drove there, and he's 99. And I thought, oh, how interesting. He's still driving. Wow, that's incredible. So we walked into the foyer area and I introduced myself and I said, Jim, I know you're here for breakfast, but I'd love to do a quick interview with you. And he said, oh, sure. And he's always just so jovial, so delighted to talk to everyone he's with. I kind of pulled him to the side in the foyer. And now that I look back at it, I regret not asking this 99-year-old man on a walker to sit down. But, anyways, I just talked to him quickly and I wanted to get the interview soundbite. And I thought, oh, I'll run a 40-second story at night about him that I met this survivor and, put a soundbite together. And as we finished the interview, he handed me his card, which I thought was so cool because I'm like, who's this card carrying, driving 99-year-old? And he said, I'd love to continue this conversation. And I said, oh, how cool. He said, please email me. So I did. I got back to the studio. I was busy that afternoon and I sent him an email and he said, how would you like to have you and your husband come and meet me at Garden the Gods Club this week for lunch? And I said, oh, wonderful. And
Oh,
I just, something about him, I knew I couldn't turn down. And he was just so interesting and so
yeah.
engaging when I met him. I remember he put the interview, I asked him about like being a hero. And he's like, well, the real heroes today are the men and women who are in war constantly and are constantly bombarded. We only had a few hours of bombs going off. They're the real heroes. And I thought, oh, how cool that he turned
Mm,
it back on them and always does that. And I learned that
yeah.
about Jim. He's never talking about himself. He'll do it for a soundbite because he knows the journalist wants it, but he always puts it on someone else. So we met at Garden of the Gods Club, and so began our journey together. His
Mm,
son was pretty bold and said to me when we sat down, tell me about your relationship with Christ. I went
yeah.
almost spit out my food because I just thought that was such a ridiculous question to ask someone who you just met five
Yeah.
minutes ago. I mean, he went for the jugular. And I said, well, I was raised Catholic. I sat and stood in church for years. I did the sign of the cross. That's what I did. I know who Jesus is, but I don't know him. And he
Mm,
said to me, well, how would you like to study the Bible with me? And I thought, I don't even know where my Bible is. Okay. I just said yes right
yeah.
away. He goes, great, meet me back
Yeah.
here on Tuesday. And so began 5 years of Tuesdays with Jim. And it just opened
Mm,
my eyes to so many things. And it was so remarkable. And I got to write a book about it. And I know people will love it because I
yeah.
know when they see Jim's heart and they see that he is the most fulfilled person. He said to me at that lunch, do you want to meet the most fulfilled person you've ever seen? And I said, yeah, of course. He said, you're
Mm,
looking at him. And I believed it
mm,
immediately because I could sense his
mm,
peace. I could sense his joy. And I knew he was the real deal.
Hey friends, quick break in this conversation to remind you of something. If you are loving the show, you're loving the conversations we're having, it would mean the absolute world to me if you would leave a rating and a written review on Apple Podcasts for Radical Radiance. When that happens, when more of those happen, the show gets put in front of more women, and in turn, it allows them the opportunity to take part in conversations that will show them more about what it looks like to radiate the heart of Jesus. Can't think of anything better than that. So it would mean the world to me if you would take just 2 minutes of your time and leave a rating and a written review. I'd love to hear what you think. Now, let's get back to the conversation. Yeah, there's part of me that listens to that statement and thinks, man, he's so confident of that, right? Like, there are a lot of my days that feel very mundane, and people listening will identify with that, right? There's a lot of days of our lives that feel mundane. There's a lot of our days that feel like maybe they don't matter, right? And
Yes.
so as he said this really bold statement to you, again, would you like to meet the most fulfilled person you'll ever know? You're looking at him. As you continued to get to know him, how did you see that statement continue to be true about him?
Have you ever sat with someone and their energy is so calm and so real and so present that you just want to continue sitting with
Yeah.
them? You don't want the conversation to end. That is why I
Yeah.
believed it right away in that moment. And then
Okay.
over the course of the 5 years, I saw it come true. He began and ended his day with prayer. Okay, so a lot of us do that. That's not a big deal. Began and ended his day with prayer. But what Jim did was he lived in the present, and he was fully engaged with the person in front of him. And he had a remarkable experience. Don't we all hope we have as many friends as Jim does? He had constant speaking engagements. He was constantly having people in his home. He had sort of a sitting area in his bedroom. And he was always engaging with people, always interested in what they had to say. And he talked to me about how he became a navigator early on, which the Navigators is a worldwide Christian ministry that's based here in Colorado Springs. And he was one of the original navigators, and how he came to
Oh,
Christ
wow.
on board a Navy ship, and how he felt this peace that surpasses all understanding from such a young age. I think he was in his 20s, if I'm remembering correctly. I'm sure his family could correct that. I think he was in his 20s, and he lived such a joyous life constantly. Jim did not get upset about anything but travel delays. That's the only thing that got under his skin. And I know that sounds
Wow.
weird because I get irritated all day long about like a million pet peeves.
Absolutely.
Jim
Me
doesn't have
too.
a pet
Yeah.
peeve. His only one was traveling. And I think it was because
Wow.
he couldn't get around so easily. It would be irritating to him to be delayed because he was ready for the
Sure.
next thing always. He was ready to engage.
Yeah.
And so many people, as they age, are less engaged over time. But Jim was always engaged with everyone in front of him. And he was so committed to meeting me every Tuesday. And he made me feel so much like I was the most important person in his life, which is a thing that I think I have a gift at with the people that I meet, that making them feel like they are my most important person. Sitting at lunches, the average lunch with Diane, I always say, is 2 hours. And I need to get better about that because I'm
I love
working
that.
on my boundaries. But it's because I'm so engaged and interested in what that person has to say in front of me. But I get so
Yeah.
depleted by it sometimes too, because I want that conversation to be
Sure.
back and forth. And Jim gave that to me. He was so interested in what I was
Mm.
saying, and I was so interested in him. He taught me that life is about
Mhm.
3 things: a relationship with God, family, and friends. And the depth of those relationships and the number is what makes the relationship happen. So you and I are talking here. We only
Mm.
get this one chance together. So I'm not going to know you at the depth that I want to. But Jim gave that to everyone
Yeah.
he met, and he wanted to continue those conversations. He said he always dreamed of having in heaven, and I'm sure he has this now because we talked about heaven a lot, a reunion planet where conversations like you and I are having, Rebecca, could continue when you don't want those conversations to end, but you know they have to because
I
of your
love
schedule
that
or the
so
hustle and
much.
bustle of the day. So I know he's on his reunion planet right now talking.
Yes. I love that so much. What a lesson on friendship I mean, what a lesson on seeing people and really slowing down enough for that. I think sometimes that's my problem, right? I'm on to the next thing, or I am thinking about the other things I have to complete that day or whatever. And I was so convicted of that during the pandemic because so much of my life was stripped away, right? Like I didn't really have anything I was coming home to that was really pressing or anywhere I was going that was real pressing. And so there were so many moments where God would stop me and say, like, that girl at the checkout counter, you've seen her twice a week for the last couple months. You don't know her name and you don't know where she's going to spend eternity, but she's going to spend eternity somewhere, right? And like, what are you going to do with that 42-second encounter that you have with her as she is scanning your paper towels? Because that matters, right? So don't neglect those things. I was so convicted of that during that time. And it's something I still think about a lot. It's something that shifted in me when so much of my life was stripped away and so much of what we were doing was stripped away. In its place, I think God opened my eyes to opportunities I was missing like that.
So I didn't always want to go see Jim every week. I will admit that because of my schedule.
Yeah.
I was tired, or I was a new mama, or whatever it was. My excuse was, gosh, I really don't have time for this today. I don't have time to prepare my Bible study. He would do this method that he called the ABCDE method, where you would read a verse. We started in John. You would read a chapter and create a title, your best verse, your challenge, your difficulty, and E would actually be summary. And I would do that every week. And it took me a while because I wanted to be such a good student.
Yeah.
So there were times I didn't want to get
Yeah.
it ready. I just was tired. I was drained from my job. But every time I went, my soul was completely refreshed by the end of it. And I was a different person and I was ready for my day in such a different way. We'd spend an hour and a half to 2 hours together, whether that was over lunch or in his home. And the depth and the number of times together created a remarkable relationship. It is very much like Tuesdays with Maury.
Yeah.
I had more than 200
I love
Tuesdays
that.
with him. So that's hence the name of the book.
What a gift.
200 Tuesdays.
Yeah. What a gift. I love that. I'm curious because this is my world and I'm an interviewer and I love interviewing. How did he make you a better interviewer?
Because he made me present. Because when you are fully present with someone and you are fully interested in what they're talking about, that is what makes those moments shine. I thought about it recently. I interviewed a Holocaust survivor last week. And let me tell you, I had to take the day off after because it was so intense.
Yeah.
Because you hear this story of
Yeah.
remarkable evil, remarkable grief, just a story over and over again that was so extraordinarily painful. And I was so present with her. And I actually decided when we aired the story to just air everything she said, and I added nothing of my own. Normally, a story done by a journalist, you hear her, then you hear the journalist's voice, then you hear her, and then the journalist's voice. I just let her speak for 6 minutes. And so I think being present is what made me a better interviewer with people. And that was because of Jim. He showed me what present looks like.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. And we've talked about this a little bit with the Bible study that you guys did together. And I'm curious, in what other ways did your friendship with him and that time that you spent together, how did that shape your relationship with God?
How did it shape my relationship with God? Because I knew it was important. Because I was reminded on a weekly basis of what it is that gets you grounded again. And without that, I think of Jim all the time in the decisions I make. I always want to make good choices, and I have made some really bad choices in my life. And I reveal those parts in my book. And it was extraordinarily difficult for me to reveal that because it's embarrassing, it's humbling, it shows how ugly my soul got at a certain stage of my life. And I struggled with thinking about that with viewers and how they would react. And I think I'll just go off social media for a time when my book is released because I don't know what that's going to look like. Because when you bear the ugly parts of your soul, you really are vulnerable and you better be ready for the haters. And the haters are really hard for me. But Jim taught me to somehow try to ignore them as much as I can. As a journalist, you just get bombarded with people's opinions all day long. I imagine you've had haters every once in a while, but not too many,
Just a
Rebecca.
few. Just a few, but I have
I
a book coming out next year.
know.
And so I'm taking in all of the advice about boundaries as far as social media goes, because I know myself, and there's just only so much, right, that you can take in when you're trying the best you know how to be faithful to what God called you to do.
Yes.
Right. And that's where I feel like we both sit. And so remembering what voices get the volume in your head and in your heart just really matters.
Really matters. When
Take that time, girl.
Thank you. When I took this new job, I just started this summer at Channel 5. And when I took this job, I made a point of saying to myself from day one, I will never look at our main Facebook page at the comments. And I never have. And it has been so good for my soul. It has been so good.
That is awesome.
That's not something I'm...
awesome. No, I think that's really wise. I heard something that has always stuck with me. I think this is so wise. And I don't remember who said it. I wish I did, but they said, don't listen or give weight to the top 10 and the bottom 10% of what people say about you. Don't listen to the top 10% or you're going to be real prideful. Don't listen to the bottom 10% because those people probably don't deserve to have a voice in your life. And so ignore both and listen in the in-between, because that's where constructive feedback typically comes from. That was so helpful to me.
I love it. I so agree with that. Whoever that wise person was, when I would complain to Jim about what people would say about me, he wrote down a Bible verse. And I wish I was good about memorizing which one it is, but that just doesn't register in my brain. I don't have the space for it, but I can recite it. Fools show their annoyance at once, but the prudent overlook an insult. And I had that posted on my desk to remind myself every time a hater would come through. Just overlook it.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. And Jim used to tell me, it only matters what God thinks. It doesn't even matter what your husband thinks. It just matters what God thinks. It doesn't matter what your family thinks, just him. And so when I focus on that, it really helps me. I hope that helps some of your listeners too.
Yeah, it totally helps. That's got to be in Proverbs. That sounds so Proverbsy.
Doesn't it?
I love that verse. Yeah, it totally does. That's going to go over here on my prayer board.
Will it? Oh, I love that.
That would be a good one. Yeah, I think that would be wise in this season. So that's really good. Well, and I love how he mentored you, right? That would be a good way of saying what happened in your friendship. He mentored you. He discipled you in a really purposeful way. So as you look back on that experience and you share about this in the book, how do you want to encourage others in their own, either being a mentee or being the person who's mentoring someone else? What did you learn about those types of friendships that you would want to carry forward, or say, hey, here's what I learned during that time?
I always have had mentors in my life. I have gravitated towards the people in whatever career field I was looking at from a young child. How did you get there?
Yeah.
What did you do? How did this happen? So I'm not afraid to go seeking those people. And I understand too that I'm at an advantage because I have access to people. But Jim was different because he was just someone I walked up and met and interviewed quickly, who pulled me into his life. Jim was mentoring till the last days of his life. I remember, I think it was about 3 days before he died, he asked me to start responding to some of the emails to tell people he was dying and that this was the final message to them. And what a gift that was to me, to be able to respond to all those people and say, hello, this is Diane. I'm responding for Jim. He's in the final days of his life, but he wanted you to know this. He wanted you to hear this. And he would dictate whatever it was and I would write it for him. But Jim mentored till the end. And that is what gave his life such value. He didn't stop. And so I think we can be mentors to people. I don't know that I'm a mentor to maybe some of the journalists in my newsroom. I hope I am. But I know that it's so valuable to continue seeking those people out and trusting their advice. I have multiple mentors in my life. And when I first met Jim, I thought, how do I even describe this relationship with him? Because of course he was so polite and said, are you sure your husband's okay with this? I said, I think we're good, Jim. You're 99. Are you so polite, so sweet, so kind? My husband was like, yeah, I'm good with it, babe. We're good.
Yeah.
But he just I so encourage people to look for those people in their life who you think, that's who I want to be like. That's who I want to model my life after. And so I described him as my mentor. And I remember the first time I started sharing about Jim, I asked my boss, because as a journalist, you have to be so careful to try to not show biases. And she was so encouraging to me, allowing me
Mm,
to share Jim's wisdom without getting into Jesus, but people would figure it out. So my Facebook
sure.
lives became so viral and wildly popular. They're still on my page. You can listen to them. Different topics we would come up with each week, just like you and I are talking about right now, to share with the
Yeah.
world. And I kept thinking, I don't deserve to just have him by myself. I have this platform,
Mm,
use it. So one day I was like, hello, meet my mentor, Jim. He's 99 years old. We meet every
mm,
week. I'd love to share some of his wisdom. And so it began, and people loved it. When you meet Jim, you can't
I have
not
no
love
doubt.
him. He's so
Yeah.
special.
Yeah. What a gift. I'm so glad that you shared that with other people. Now that's like the first thing I'm going to do while I eat my lunch after we chat is go into the depths of your Facebook page so I can find some of them. I just love that so much. And I am so curious. I want to hear about this. You got to deliver the eulogy of your friend, Jim. And I like, what was that experience like to get to celebrate his life, but to get to be a part of such an important moment for his family and for you? What was that like?
So I read him his eulogy while he was alive. I think it's really
Wow.
important to tell people what you think about them before they die. And he loved it. He was happy with it. It was sad reading it to him, but he just smiled and said it was wonderful. And the book has the entire eulogy in it. And it just shares our journey, like I'm sharing with you now. It was so powerful to be the one person who knew Jim the least, I suppose, of the
Mm,
250 people in the room, because I only knew him for 5 years, but yet have such this deep friendship with someone, to be able to share that
mm,
with that room. And it was broadcast, live streamed, um,
mhm,
from Glen Erie. And the place, Glen Erie, is this beautiful castle that the founder of Colorado Springs lived in. And then the Navigators took over.
mm,
And Jim's task, after being involved in the Navy, when he came to the Navs as he retired, was to bring Glen Erie back to life. And oh my gosh, Rebecca, I wish you could see it. It is magical. It
me
is my happy
too.
place. We're in this great hall where just 4 years before we celebrated his 100th birthday. And here I am delivering the moment of his death and sharing about my experience with him. And I know he loved it. I know he wanted me to keep telling my
Yeah.
story about how we met and what I learned from him. And he would say, well, you didn't learn it from me. You learned it from Jesus. Always putting it back on him. You know,
Oh,
it was really special to deliver that eulogy. And there were other people who spoke that day and said beautiful things about him. So I
yeah.
suppose I wasn't the only one delivering a eulogy, but it was one of the highlights of my life because he
I'm
changed my
sure.
life. Although he'd say
Yeah.
Jesus changed my life.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's so good. Well, there's one question that I ask every single guest that comes on the show. And after our conversation, I'm so excited to ask you, Diane. And it has to do with a verse God really used in my life as he led me towards naming the podcast what we named it, which is Radical Radiance, really with a heart to help women see what does it look like to radiate the heart of Jesus in all that we do. And the verse Psalm 34:5 says, those who look to him are radiant and their faces are never covered in shame. And so the question I love asking, Diane, is what about Jesus makes you radiant?
Jesus is love. God is love. And Jim reminded me that that is in the Bible so many times. I don't know, is it like 2 billion? I'm just
Mm,
kidding. I think it's like
yeah, so many. No, but really, yeah.
love. And so when I am centered on love, which is the essence of who we all are, that is how I'm radiant every day. And I struggle with this
Yeah.
so much in my newsroom because it's fast paced and it's intense. We're talking about
Mhm.
horrible things. And I'm sure some of my colleagues would say, Diane is not love all the time. But when I am grounded, when I get back to centering on Jesus, that love is how I am radiant every day. And I hope
Yeah.
that my friends and my family would say that Diane is one of the most loving people, one of the most
Yeah.
loving people they've ever met. And that is how I think I'm able to radiate Jesus every day, by just being loving to others. And I think it
Yeah.
catches
That's
some
so
people
good.
off guard because I say I love you a lot to people and they don't know what to do with that. But I sincerely mean that. Because if you
Yeah.
don't say it, I mean, look at COVID. I had COVID recently, and you come to terms with life and death in that moment, and you go, wait, am I going to
Yeah.
die from this? How am I being loving every day? And it actually helped
Yeah.
me heal a relationship with my brother. We've not talked for a really long time. And I thought to myself, how can I be loved to my brother again? And we've recently reconciled, and it's wonderful. And
Wow.
so, people look at journalists like, oh, they have it all together. Oh, it's this person on TV, hair and makeup. Oh my gosh, I'm the biggest mess out there. And that's why I think I can share the way I have in my book about the really bad parts of my
Yeah.
soul, the struggles I went through getting a divorce, the struggles I went to with the birth of my daughter, just showing who we really are. But I hope that answers your question. Did it, Rebecca? I think I went
It
on a tangent.
absolutely answers my question. It absolutely does. And that is the greatest commandment, right? Love the Lord with our heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love our neighbor as ourselves. And it's kind of that, if you do nothing else, do that, right? And so that's such a beautiful answer. I love that. Okay, so for our friends who are just meeting you, I want them to hear, how can they find your Facebook page? They can grab the book anywhere books are sold. 200 Tuesdays is your title, which is so fun. I can't wait for everybody to get their hands on it, but share a little bit about how they can connect with you after this conversation.
Can just search for Dianne Derby, Dianne. I have two N's in my name. Derby, like Kentucky Derby, Derby. I would love to connect with
Yes,
them.
I love that last name.
They'll mostly see news on
Awesome.
that page, but if you look in the videos, you'll see all the videos with Jim. And I know they will encourage your heart. It's fun to see people interacting with us. And some people would bring up different topics they wanted to talk about each week with Jim. And
Mm,
he was, of course, so delighted to hear that. And he would prepare a whole plan of what he was going to talk about. Jim came prepared
I
to
love that.
everything he did. And so to be able to share that with the world, I will tell you the way this book, can I share a little bit about how the book came together? It
Please.
was so
Yes.
cool. And for someone who has a book in the works, you will love this, Rebecca. When Jim has a book too, he has multiple books, he has 5 books. And he is in the Guinness Book of World Records as the oldest author, which is so neat. But
That.
the Navigators, NavPress, had this meeting and they said, we'd love you to come and meet these authors. And it was like some of their top authors in NavPress. They're here, they're in town. Come to lunch, come listen to them speak. I said, well, I don't have time to listen to them speak because I have this plan in the morning, but I'd love to come to lunch. And we walk into Cowboy Star, and it's this really fancy restaurant. And all of a sudden, I look over and I see the whole publishing team and all these authors. And I go up to the publisher, Don Pape, and I said to him, gosh, Don, it's so cool that I'm here. Thank you for inviting me. It's so special. I said, I've always wanted to write a book about Jim and what I learned from him. He goes, why do you think you're here? Rebecca, the blood almost drained out of my body because I didn't think that I was
Stop.
there for that. He goes, I want you to meet
Yeah.
someone. And he introduced me to Trisha Heyer, who is my co-author. And I will tell you, I
Yeah.
connected with this woman in the same way that I connected with Jim. I was locked on her for 2 hours. She has the most remarkable story. She is a New York Times best-selling
Mm.
author who lost her husband when her children were very young, suddenly in 24 hours. And she talks about that journey of grief, and her book, Let's Pretend We're Normal, talks about what it looks like to be a mom trying to get through life after so much grief. And I met her and she said, well, I would love to write your book with you. And it was that simple. She said, this is how we do it.
Yeah.
You're a full-time mom, you're a full-time journalist. You're not going to be able to do this. We're going to do this together. And it was the most beautiful
Mm.
collaboration and one of my greatest friendships in my life. And when you meet Trisha, you don't want to
I
stop talking
love
to her.
that.
She's just so fantastic.
Yeah.
And so she wrote alongside with me because I write for TV. we write in 30-second sound bites. How do you write
Yeah.
this big book? And I wrote it over a year on my dinner breaks and late at night. And she helped me. It was so, and then we finally edited all of it together at Glen Erie, which was so special to be there because it is my happy
Yeah.
place. So that's how the book came about with her help.
Wow. I love that so, so much. It's one of those moments that you probably left thinking, okay, only God, like only God could have orchestrated that. Right.
A
And
million percent.
I love that so
I
much.
got in the car, I
Yeah.
called my
Yep.
husband and I burst into tears. And I said, I think I just had a
Absolutely.
life-changing meeting, just so you know. And I think I'm going to
Yep.
write a book about Jim. And my husband is so calm. He does not react the way I want him to do and jump up and down. He's like, that's cool,
Yeah.
babe. What? Can you not
Yeah.
scream up and down with
I
me?
need you to match my level of excitement is what I need you to do right now.
And this is why I chose him. He is very calm. He is very calm.
Yes. Differences in personality. Yeah, those differences in personality can be a gift at times.
He's a first responder.
I
He was
love
a
that.
police officer. In my book, I talk about the shooting
Oh,
he was
yep.
in with Colorado Springs Police. And wow, just the moments of that and how I really had to call on God in those moments. But he's so calm. And so first responders are calm. I am not. I
Yeah.
get excited about everything.
I love that so much.
Thank
I
you,
love it so
Rebecca.
much. Well, I cannot wait for everybody to get their hands on the book. I know this is going to be just such a special book to read this spring, and so I can't wait for everybody to get their hands on it. So make sure you go back and listen to Diane and Jim. I can't wait to do that myself this afternoon. And Diane, I just want to thank you one more time for writing this really important book. First of all, I want to thank you for that, and then I also just want to thank you so much for your time and this conversation. I just treasure it so much.
It is a delight to my soul, Rebecca. Thank you so much. Thank you.